245 days. 23. January, 65. Dearest Suzie, I received 2 letters from you today, and needless to say, I was real pleased. I was especially happy to hear that you took Billy roller skating. I hope you will take him out like that as often as you can. I remember that I used to like to skate, but of course I never went enough to be any good. Tell Billy that I enjoyed his letter. It was very sweet. I'm going to keep that one in my souvenir box. I was sorry to hear that the boys had colds. I hope that they are better by now. I was tickled to death to hear that you had met someone there in the same boat that you are in. I don't know this guy, but I know a lot of people in town in Sok Trang. I'll sure make it a point to meet him next time I go down there. We do go to town there quite often for troop lifts. That is where Hampton is stationed, by the way. Bert Badgett and I play pinochle just about every night. I taught Louis Litt how to play, so we usually play as partners, and Bert has his own partner. Everything is the same with him as far as I know. I don't know of anyone else that is going with me to Bangkok. I won't know for sure if I'm going till I get orders. Our orders are for R&R have to come from Saigon, so we never know till the last minute. Charlie is the same. If nothing happens between now and the time I get ready to come home, I'll try to bring him. Well, I started out thinking I had all kinds of things to write, but I have just about wrote out. Tomorrow I'm scheduled to give about 4 check rides, but it's Sunday and these people don't like to work on Sunday. They're all captains, so I imagine they will find some way to fink out of it. We had a troop lift this afternoon. It was a real nice one. Not a shot fired. That's the kind of thing I like. Things are pretty quiet around here right now. That worries me. There should be a lot of fighting going on this time of year. I'm afraid that the VC are up to something. Oh well. Enough of this rambling talk. I miss you all very much. Tell Billy to write me again, and I hope Brett is not hurting too bad with his new teeth. Or is it new tooth? All my love. Bill. If you haven't listened to last episode, you'll likely be a bit lost for the rest of today's. Long story short, I've split up a piece of writing of mine, and I'm presenting it across a few episodes. I recommend going back and listening to the earlier part. Anyway, here's Finding My Grief, Part 2. Highway lights flashed like strobes and faded into nothingness, leaving me with only the dark night sky of the country. My ears were stuffed with tiny speakers, loudly playing whatever could fit onto those 64 gigabytes on my light blue iPod mini. Let it be, crooned Paul McCartney. I can't, Paul, I thought. Everyone was in their own worlds. Mine was statuesque and paranoid that someone would notice the tears streaming down my cheeks. These aren't tears of sorrow, I told myself, just anger. A young man could not be vulnerable. I felt worse than I thought I possibly could walking into the trailer. Meemaw was sitting there, crying, struck with grief and 55 years of for better or worse. There was nothing I could do to help. Catholic teachings and parables became mantras expressing that Poppy was in a better place now, even if he was a Baptist, and she was sure God would still let him into heaven. Meemaw was the glue that always held the family together, but now she was falling apart. When they moved up to Georgia only a few years before, we all questioned the decision. After all, Poppy's health was getting worse. Why would he want to go to the middle of nowhere? What would they do if there was an emergency? I asked my parents, and they joked that all Lowies wanted to return home to Middle Georgia to die, like elephants. Originally, I was told the story that the night Poppy died, he woke up in pain. Meemaw, who rarely slept full nights herself, ran into his room and helped ease his troubles with some painkillers. What was strange is she decided to stay with him, which was something she typically didn't do. She told us she lay next to him in bed until he fell asleep. She said he seemed at ease, and she reveled in the moment until she herself fell asleep. The next morning, she woke up, and he didn't. I've been told by one of my oldest cousins since that it didn't happen that way at all. I should have known better, even at the time, but I guess what really happened doesn't matter much. I prefer the story I was told. It's a prettier picture. In the years following, Meemaw chose to sleep in Poppy's room. At first, we thought she was just being polite and giving up her bed for others to sleep on when we came up for the funeral, but she never actually left his bed. She never seemed to want to offer an explanation why either. Ironically, a Lowie family reunion was already planned for the weekend that Poppy passed. His siblings and cousins had already been funneling into McRae from all around the South to attend. Dad joked that Poppy was so cheap he didn't want people spending money to come to his funeral. Nearby, Little Okmulgee State Park hosted the Celebration of Life, a place used regularly for the not-at-all annual family reunions. Dozens of people I barely knew swarmed us, looking at us with that face, that "you're so poor and helpless and you lost your grandpappy and now we're all here to watch you squirm" look. I went on walks by myself, avoiding the crowd and the attention. I took photos of the foliage and talked to myself as a distraction. At one point, my father, who typically maintained his composure, grabbed my brother and I, leading us down a random road which led to a campground. He wanted to be alone. Nothing was said. All remained quiet. Like the breaking of a dam, he broke into tears. He hugged us. He never hugged us. This is the only time I remember him crying during my entire childhood. I didn't even see him cry when Penelope was put down. I vividly remember the hug, which is likely the last time he probably hugged me. He cried and told us how much he loved us. I cried too. So did my brother. The photo I chose for today is an aerial shot of a few buildings on fire. Smoke is pluming in the air. This is certainly not from a troop lift, but it still feels related to today's letter anyway. I'm Alex Lowie, and I hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode of Dearest Suzie, and receiving messages from the past that my Poppy wrote exactly 60 years ago. I sincerely appreciate your time and interest. Please consider following the podcast on your preferred platform, and if you're enjoying it, I kindly ask that you take the time to rate the show and leave a review. Also, please follow the project on YouTube, X, and Instagram. All likes, comments, shares, and reviews will help grow the reach of this story. The links for these things should be in the description of this episode. Please feel free to email me at dearestsuziepodcast@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to say. I'd love to chat or to hear about your stories as well. Thank you for listening, and God bless.